to talk about fundraising and the change of LP GP dynamics. So my name's Lomax Ward. I'm general partner and co-founder of Luminous Ventures, a London-based seed fund focusing on deep tech within human health.
Flashpoint Group is a software tech-focused venture investment house, and we're aimed at founders from extended Central and Eastern Europe and Israel who are looking to build global businesses.
Thomas, I'm from CE Equity Partners. We are a buyout fund focused on CE region solely, currently managing 1.2 billion USD across 2 funds.
And TIF, been for 5 years there as a front office investment manager, working with the primarily VC, mainly early stage and also later stage VC investments, as well as with business angels.
I'm Małgosia Walczak and I represent PFR Ventures, fund of funds. We are investing via VC and CVC, corporate venture capital funds, in small and medium businesses in Poland and outside Poland.
What are the criteria to define success for a GP?
Track record is, of course, one of the crucial points we are looking at, but we are also looking at the GPs if they are the first-time team. What is important for us is also how the people are perceived. We do believe in transparency and sustainability in terms of not investment investment, but also how do people maintain relationship? How do they build a relationship? If there is a respect among the people, an open-minded, respectful for the GPs and for the LPs and for the investment projects, for the startups.
And how closely do you look at the relationship between the partners in for example, emerging managers? How closely do you scrutinize that?
Reference lists from the partners, and we have our network.
Very simple or short answer would be indeed it is the performance. But obviously that's not the only thing you look at. And also when you look at the performance, then you have to put it in perspective, both from the region that the fund manager comes from, because it would not be perhaps fair to compare somebody who is a first-time team from Central Eastern Europe vis-a-vis a manager who is based in London, Munich, or Paris.
You know, most of our LPs are family offices and high net worth individuals. So we do have some institutional interest around our business as well. I mean, from the perspective of family offices and high net worth individuals, they're definitely very much focused on risk reward, right? So they want to understand the returns, they want to understand the risk that they will be taking on. So track record is definitely the single most important area of focus for them, right? So people want a lot of transparency, much more transparency than was the case 5-10 years ago.
What do you look for in LPs? Of course, there's capital, but what are you looking for in terms of LPs, you know, coming into your funds that's beyond capital?
I mean, I think it's good to have a mix. I think it's very different to work with family offices as opposed to institutional investors. Family offices, they all have their own sector expertise, right? And apart from giving you money, they're very much interested to see this additional sector expertise work if they can. So many of our family offices do provide us expert advice on some of the companies that we're looking at, and that's extremely valuable. If you end up with a very large list of LPs, it becomes difficult to manage.
Trying to understand how important am I going to be for the LP in terms of his ultimate exposure to me. Very tiny exposure from a large institution would mean that I'm not going to get any interest at all, even in situations I might need it in the end of the day. In ideal scenario, I know what am I doing as the manager, and I'm using the LP only as the source of money for my activities, but it is assumed that I will need greater interaction in times when actually such situation occurs, and then I need to make sure that the LP is going to be there for me to have a frank discussion. Family office in the end of the day is what it is, a family office, and you cannot probably rely on long-term stability in terms of strategy as much as with really an institution.
What are the advantages of investing in an emerging manager?
GPs, historically, they used to be bankers or let's say consultants and people with not really operational background, which perhaps at the time reflected the way how the market just developed, because these were the people with the most sort of financial and strategy expertise to enter the business. But with entrepreneurship, let's say making their own heroes and people becoming very successful financially and also willing to transition to investment business from the operating experience, that has brought in, let's say, a new breed of managers, people who actually do have hands-on experience in the type of businesses that they invest in. Not be supporting emerging managers, then we would not have probably 90% of the venture capital firms in Central Eastern Europe.
80% of the fund we are investing in Poland are emerging managers. So the criteria are completely different when you are assessing first-time teams and emerging managers. What we are looking always at is that they have some knowledge or person, not maybe in key personnel, but in the committee, who has experience in investment, who had the experience in the investment market. In bigger funds, everything over 50 million euro, we are looking for people with track record, but they can also be first-time teams. But with the track record in different VC funds. So this is what we are looking at. So
market builder is where we see that we need to put our weight more behind the emerging managers, and this more probably relates, if we speak of geographies, to indeed Central Eastern Europe, south of Europe, let's say countries where the VC ecosystem and the VC market is not yet so developed as opposed to perhaps the prime Western European countries, and to support second and third time around the managers that we have supported in their first fund generation, to make sure that they gradually can, let's say, transition to fully sustainable fundraising mode where EIF is very little or not at all required. And then the third category access provision is where we try basically to our private LPs, because EIF also increasingly manages dedicated financing envelopes for private LPs, where we try to provide access to, let's say, blue chip managers, regardless of where they are based.
What do you think are the pros and cons then of backing emerging managers?
I think certainly we're all very different. By we, I mean managers, right? We all employ different investment strategies. The GP community in Central and Eastern Europe, you know, everyone was very similar, doing pretty much the same things, bidding on the same companies. But you can differentiate with your strategy and with your approaches of how you source investments, how you select investments. And it's good for the market. So the LPs should support this, because a new strategy can yield, you know, very different results and potentially better risk-adjusted returns than the strategy where everyone is, well, herding to a degree, right?
That they're young and hungry and eager to try new things, new strategies, which, you know, may yield better performance. And so I think that more entrepreneurial nature of them can certainly, well, there is of course data that shows that first-time funds outperform later funds. So any conflicts that you can, you know, be happy to talk about and how they've been resolved? Or...
You're going to communicate on a regular basis, and only in case something goes really wrong, you're going to go back to your contracts and start acting accordingly.
The soft element or kind of the unwritten part of the relationship, that's very important for a long-term building a long-term and sustainable relationship between an LP like EIF and the GP, because if we start to feel that we're losing trust, or let's say that the GP is non-transparent to us, or let's say just basically treating us on formal quarterly report basis, unless superb performance justifies it, well, it's not a relationship killer, but it's definitely a red flag on our side.
I think there's a huge difference between institutionals and sort of family offices in this regard. Because if we think about the sources of conflict between GPs and LPs, I think it comes down to 2 points. On the GP side, it's an LP that is not funding a drawdown notice, right? So essentially we have to do a deal and the LP is not funding. That is a huge problem. The other way around, the source might be poor performance by the manager and, you know, any potential wrongdoing even by the manager. But I think that is a much rarer occurrence. Deal with family offices and high net worth individuals, their personal circumstances do change. And our business is a very long-term business. We expect people to be able to fund a commitment for the next 5 years.
From an LP perspective, obviously, when we hear potential conflicts between the LP and GP, it typically relates to certain investment situations where the GP itself is conflicted, be it sort of a crossover investment between the several funds that the GP is managing, or be it an investment where maybe the GP himself privately has a prior stake, or there is something else related to basically a situation whereby GP might have differentiating interest from LPs or overall as a fund because he has some sort of private or vested motivation. There's also investment committee. It is quite often that we see that first-time managers, they tend to bring third-party people, let's say the people who are not providing the team commitment and who are not, let's say, day-to-day involved with the investment business. They put them on investment committee because they're people who bring wealth of expertise. We have sort of a dual feeling about it, but actually the position is quite clear. We prefer that the investment committee is fully controlled by the actual team who runs the business.
It's somewhat counterintuitive for some emerging managers, because when I speak to a lot of people starting funds and raising them, they want to show as value add an investment committee as possible, and bringing in external experts, etc., people with very storied business careers. And in terms of GP-LP conflicts, remembering as a GP that you are, you obviously you represent all of the LPs. It's not just a matter between you and that individual LP. It's a matter between everyone, quite frankly. So that's always something to bear in mind. What happens when a GP comes to ask you for an extension to the fund horizon? How do you feel about that?
Probably it's a rarity that the manager manages to sort of finish the fund in the initially expected term, be it 9 or 10 years. So for us, the fact that the fund would go on extension typically doesn't come as a surprise.
We are asking sometimes to prolong the fundraising, the second closing period, especially during the situation we are encountering globally now.
Another point, which is also sort of, I guess, important, is that we don't really control the exit, right? We're minority investors in most situations. It's important to get the alignment between the GP and the LPs right. So we have been putting in quite a lot of money into our own funds. Our team money component has been around 10%, which I guess is on the high end.
I think we've reached 20 past 1. I'm not going to ask for an extension, and it remains for me to say thank you very much to everyone for your insights. Really enjoyed the discussion, and have a great rest of conference.